Bullies kicked her backpack, she fought back and kicked one into a locker. The moment her backpack exploded across the hallway floor, it felt like the universe paused, not in sympathy, but in mockery. The impact wasn't loud, but the silence that followed screamed louder than 1,000 voices. Books, notebooks, pens, and a half-eaten sandwich scattered in all directions, creating a chaotic constellation of everything Ellie Hayes held close. And standing just a few feet behind her, laughing like it was all some twisted comedy, were the same three faces that haunted her every school day: Chelsea Lane, Braden Cross, and Max Teller. The unholy trinity of Sterling High. Popular. Powerful. Predatory. For a moment, Ellie just stood there, frozen not by fear anymore, but something different. Something primal. Her shoulders trembled under the weight of months, no, years, of torment. They thought she was nothing. They thought she'd break every time they kicked her down. But that day was different. That day, something inside her snapped. Or maybe, finally snapped into place. Speech balloon: if you believe in kindness, courage, and second chances, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Echoes of Life. Your support helps stories like Ellie's reach those silently enduring battles of their own. Dizzy. Ellie had always been invisible, but not by choice. She was the kind of girl who sat in the back of the classroom with her sketchpad clutched tightly in her lap, hoping no one noticed her, but secretly longing for someone to see her. Not her clothes, not her thrift store shoes or the glasses that slid down her nose, but her, the real Ellie. The one who stayed up late drawing faces of people she wished she knew. The one who memorized poems in the quiet so she could feel less alone. The one who counted cracks in the ceiling to forget about the yelling downstairs between her mother and the rent collector. Her home wasn't a sanctuary. Her mother worked 2 jobs and came home with aching feet and too little patience, and her father had left when Ellie was 7, chasing some dream that didn't include a daughter. There were no warm dinners waiting for her, no hugs, no comfort, just frozen meals and silence. The only place she found peace was in her sketchbook, and even that would soon become the target of cruelty. At school, she was a moving target. Chelsea, the queen bee with ice in her veins, had chosen Ellie as her personal punching bag. Maybe because Ellie was quiet. Maybe because she was poor. Maybe because hurting someone else made Chelsea feel powerful. Braden, her golden boy boyfriend, was her enforcer, a smirking brute who found joy in humiliating the weak. And Max, always laughing the loudest, always recording it for TikTok, loved the spotlight they created by tearing someone else down. At first, it was just words, snide comments in the hallway, whispered jokes behind her back. Then it escalated. A shoulder bump that knocked her into lockers. A trip that sent her crashing down a flight of stairs, her bruises dismissed by the school nurse as clumsy accidents. A cruel nickname, Empty Ellie, that stuck like gum to the soles of her reputation. But the worst was the day they found her sketchbook. It was Ellie's most sacred possession. The pages were her sanctuary, filled with charcoal portraits of imagined lives, brave girls, fierce women, dreamers, warriors, the kind of people she wanted to become. But when she accidentally left it behind in art class, she returned the next morning to find photocopies of her drawings plastered on lockers, bathroom stalls, and bulletin boards. One had been defaced with the words, "Creepy much?" Another had a mustache drawn over the face of a girl who looked eerily like Ellie herself. Humiliation settled in her bones like ice. Her eyes burned, her hands shook, but she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She quietly peeled the drawings off one by one while the rest of the school watched in silence, too entertained to help, too afraid to interfere. She spent the next week walking through school like a ghost. Until the rainy Friday morning, the one that would change everything. She had barely made it through the front doors when it happened. Braden stuck out his leg again. Ellie stumbled, dropping her backpack. It hit the floor and rolled, opening mid-air, its contents spilling in front of everyone in the hallway. Chelsea didn't wait. She stepped forward and kicked the backpack like a soccer ball, sending it crashing against the lockers. Max howled with laughter. But this time, Ellie didn't bend down. She didn't look at the floor. She looked up. Something had shifted. She didn't care anymore. Not about getting in trouble. Not about what anyone thought. Not about rules, or fear, or trying to stay invisible. Because she had been invisible. And it hadn't protected her. So she walked toward Brayden, slowly, deliberately. He chuckled and leaned against a locker, waiting for her to scurry past like a frightened mouse. But Ellie wasn't a mouse anymore. Without a word, she kicked him. Hard. Right in the chest. The sound was louder than anyone expected, his body slamming into the locker behind him with a hollow metallic crack that echoed down the hallway like thunder. His mouth dropped open in shock as he slid to the floor, stunned. Chelsea gasped. Max dropped his phone. Everyone else? Silent. Frozen. Watching. Ellie stood over him, her chest heaving, her rain-soaked hair clinging to her cheeks. Then, she spoke. Just once. I'm not your victim anymore. What followed was chaos, teachers shouting, students murmuring, Ellie being pulled into the principal's office while Brayden groaned behind them. She was suspended, of course. Sterling High had a zero-tolerance policy, even if they had turned a blind eye to years of bullying. But word spread fast. By the time Ellie walked out of the office, escorted by her mom with fury in her eyes and pride in her steps, she wasn't a ghost anymore. She was a fire. In those 3 days of suspension, something incredible happened. People, strangers, began to message her on social media. Students she didn't even know sent her words of support. One girl said, "I wish I was as brave as you." Another sent a drawing, her own art, inspired by Ellie's mural that once hung in the back of the art room. Ellie felt seen. She felt heard. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. When she returned to school, things weren't perfect, but they were different. Chelsea avoided her. Brayden walked with a limp. Max? Max stayed quiet. A few people nodded at Ellie in the halls. One even high-fived her. The new kid at Jaden, the one who had seen it all, invited her to sit with him at lunch. But more importantly, Ellie started believing in herself. She joined the art club again. She submitted her work to a statewide contest and won second place. Her mural, the one with the girl standing proud in the storm, was framed and hung in the school library with a small plaque underneath that read, "Strength is allowed. It rises." Megaphone. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever felt small, broken, or invisible, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Echoes of Life. Let's spread stories that remind us all of the power inside us waiting to rise. Red Heart. Speech Balloon. Tell us in the comments, have you ever had a moment where you stood up, fought back, or found your voice after being pushed down? Your story could inspire someone to find their own strength. Speech Balloon. Ellie's story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about winning. It was about becoming. Becoming someone who no longer let others write her narrative. Becoming someone who, despite fear and loneliness and pain, found a reason to stand. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to fall.